So one of the best days that I had as a young teenage boy growing up was my junior year in high school. My older brother was a senior in high school. He was getting ready to go off to college that next year, and so my parents thought, hey, we should have one last really nice family vacation before all the kids start to go every which way. And so they took us on a skiing trip to Colorado. We stayed in this little slope side condo in this tiny mountain called Silver Creek, and we skied there for the day. Then every day that week we went somewhere else. We went to Winter Park, we went to Breckenridge, we went to Copper Mountain, and the last day we were at Vail. And that day at Vail lives in my memory as one of the best days of my life. Definitely top 10. I mean, it was like a perfect day. My dad has this saying that when he looks at the blue sky and the sun shining, he says, today is a Colorado day. My dad loves Colorado. He thinks it's God's country, Colorado. And he always thinks that it's sunny and blue skies in Colorado. That's just kind of what lives in his memory. And that day was definitely one of those Colorado days. Bright blue sky, the sun was shining. We were there in February, and it was 60 degrees. It was amazing. Throughout the day, we're just shedding layers, only wearing a sweatshirt. That's all you needed. You would ride up the lift and you would start to sweat. The sun was beating down you so hot. And then you'd ski down the mountain and it would feel like this cool breeze cooling you down. And then you'd get on the lift and you'd start to sweat again. It was like this cycle of sweat and cool, sweat and cool. And then we got to have lunch outside and just almost lounging and almost sunbathing in the middle of February in Colorado. I mean, it was an amazing day. The sun was so strong, we all came home with raccoon eyes. Do you know what that is? Where you have this nice tan line of where your goggles sat on your face the whole day, and it's dark down here, almost like you have a beard, and then bright white in your eyes. We all came home with raccoon eyes. And it was just this amazing day. And I wonder if you've ever had a day like that just lives in your memory as this fantastic, nothing can beat it sort of day. The question is, when you have days like that, what do you do the following day? After you have this amazing day, what do you do the next day? Do you know what we did the next day? We went home, is what we did the next day. We went back home and we jumped right back in to the grind of life. School was the next day. My parents had to go back to work. We were fighting again, getting out the door in the morning. You just jump right back into the grind of life. It's so ironic how you can have these 2 days. It's one day you're in paradise and then the next day you're right back in it again. Many days are like that though. More often than not, we live within the scope of the grind of life. And for many people who are in that stage of parenting with kids, I'm sure the month of May feels like the grind of life for you. Our family has been grinding it out for 10 days. For the last 10 days, we have had 6 soccer games. We have had 4 track meets. We've had all the practices that go on in between with those days. And then my wife and I somehow in the midst have to take care of our own things as well. The grind of everyday life is just there. But yet, even still, in the midst of those mundane moments of life, we have these amazing days. Now, what's interesting about the way that the Gospel of John ends is that you have these 2 chapters that butt up against each other, chapter 20 and chapter 21, where chapter 20 is this amazing moment, probably the best day. It will live in the disciples' memories as one of their best days ever. They had this mind-blowing, mind-bending day where Jesus comes back from the dead. Their whole world is turned upside down. Death is defeated once and for all. And then you jump back into chapter 21, and it's they've entered into the everyday grind of life, which is ironic because some of these best days that you have change your reality forever. When you get married, life will never be the same again because you are no longer your own person. Everything you do now revolves around you and another individual. When you have kids, that changes your reality forever because now you're always thinking about them before you think about yourself. And in those moments, after you have days like that, you can't go back to life as normal. And I would argue the day Jesus rose from the dead was in the category of one of those days. But yet as you enter into John 21, the disciples seem to be going back to life as normal even before they met Jesus. This is how John chapter 21 begins. Afterwards, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them, and they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. So chapter 21 opens with a pretty dramatic scene change. All throughout chapter 20, the disciples are in Jerusalem, actually behind a locked door in some room in Jerusalem for fear of the Jews. Even after Jesus is raised from the dead, they're behind this locked door in Jerusalem. And then chapter 21 opens, and where are they? They're back north in Israel, in the region of Galilee, specifically around the Sea of Galilee. And Peter decides to go fishing. Now, on one level, that's not surprising, right? Why? Because the disciples were fishermen. Like, it was their training, it was their trade, it was probably the family business and the family within which they were raised. I mean, it's the thing that they were doing when they met Jesus, and Jesus called them to follow him. So naturally, fishing is in their blood. So at some level, it's not surprising that they would be fishing, but at the same time, it is. Because Jesus has risen from the dead. Their whole world has changed. They are not going back to the way that life used to be. Jesus has actually sent them. He says, "As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you." And so it raises the question, like, what's happening here? Like, why are the disciples fishing? Now, some scholars would speculate that maybe the disciples have actually given up on Jesus. I mean, they are fickle, after all. We've seen that before. When things get hard, when Jesus gets arrested, even though they say, "I will never abandon you," they do. So maybe the disciples have decided this isn't worth it after all. Now, I actually don't think that's what's happening here. I mean, I don't think that they have given up on Jesus. In part because when you read the resurrection accounts in Matthew and Mark, what you find is Jesus tells Mary, "Hey, go tell the disciples to meet me in Galilee. Head up north and I will meet them there." And so the disciples here are actually being obedient. Jesus says, "Go to Galilee." They go to Galilee. They're waiting around for Jesus. They got to kill time. So what are they going to do? Hey, we might as well go fishing. And at some level, like, they are actually returning to everyday life. I mean, maybe they actually need to make some money, right? Maybe they actually need to provide for their families and just get the basic necessities met. And what this highlights is that even with the reality of the resurrection, mundane, everyday life still exists. Even though Jesus has raised from the dead, even though death has been defeated, even though we know the end of the story and we know where this whole thing is headed, and Jesus is victorious and Jesus has won, even though the resurrection is true, mundane, everyday life still exists. See, sometimes we want our faith journeys to always be mountaintop experiences, don't we? Like, sometimes we want the experience of our faith always to be glorious, amazing, living at a level 10 all the time. And sometimes we wake up in the morning thinking every day, I should have this amazing quiet time with the Lord, where there's this morning mist hovering over the grass outside my house, and I have this special corner, and I get my nice steamy cup of coffee, and I lay a blanket over me, and I've got my little journal here, and I'm going to write all these poetic musings about how much I love the Lord and how the Lord has been so good to me, right? Or you come to church every Sunday, and you have this expectation that every sermon should be the Lord speaking directly to me. It's like everybody else in the room just disappears, and it should be this laser message to me, right? Or like your prayer life is this natural, ongoing prayer conversation with God. But then you have these mornings where you try and sit down to do a quiet time. You even get up before your kids, but for whatever reason that morning, they get up earlier than they usually do, and they interrupt you, and they spill your coffee on your lap, and they spill it on your journal, and you're like, Or if kids are out of the house, you get up and you sit down to actually spend some time with the Lord, but all you can do is write out your to-do list for the day. Like, I got to do this, and then I got to do this, and I got to do this. You come to church, and it's like somebody's like, how was that message today? You're like, it was all right. It was just okay. I don't know half of what he said anyway up there, right? Or prayer just seems like a slog. Like the reality of everyday life and the tension of everyday life, even in our spiritual journey, exists, even though the resurrection is true. And the reality of everyday life is that it comes with frustrations, it comes with disappointments, it comes with challenges. And you even see that here for the disciples. We're not told the emotional tenor of how they are coming off the water that morning, but it says that they were out all night and they caught nothing. Like for anybody who's a fisherman, even if you're just going out for recreation, it's like, I want to catch fish. And when it doesn't happen, it's like, what a letdown. And so where are you in this season of your life experiencing that tension? Where in your spiritual journey are you experiencing disappointment? Maybe even some measure of frustration. We always want it to be the mountaintop experience. But life doesn't work that way. It's not always the way it is, even though the resurrection is true. So where in your everyday life are you experiencing tension and frustration? And what we see in this moment is that Jesus does three things for the disciples that give us an understanding on how we engage in those moments where we experience maybe the disappointment and the tension and the frustration of everyday life. And the first thing that we see is that Jesus is present. Jesus is present with them. Verse 4, early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore. Jesus is right there with them. But the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. Jesus is present. Even if they, and even if we, don't realize it. Jesus is present with us in our everyday life, even when tension, especially when tension and disappointment are there. I have this memory of being in elementary school and going to a summer camp one year. I probably was in third or fourth grade. And I went away for a week of summer camp and had an amazing time. Met new friends, played all these wild, fun games, stayed up late at night, made s'mores around the campfire with my new friends. And this week of summer camp ended with this really fancy banquet sort of meal, as fancy as a summer camp can make it for elementary school kids. And the idea was you were going to get dressed up a little bit. You brought a special pair of clothes. You were going to do your hair a little bit, which for me, I had this pretty cool side spike thing happening. Do you guys remember that from those kids who are 80s? It was all combed over here, but on the side just spiked up a little bit. It was pretty pathetic when I look back at it now. So they had the dining hall all decorated and everything, and the plan was you were going to sit at a table with your cabin. They had the tables numbered with your cabin, and we had 9 kids in our cabin, and around the table there was only 8 chairs. That's all they could fit. And so on the porch of the dining hall, they had overflow seating. So I was the last one to get to the table, and I realized all the seats were full, which meant I had to go to overflow seating, and I was so disappointed. I mean, these are all my new friends that I made at camp this week. I wanted to sit with them. I had to go out on the porch and sit with some random counselor who I didn't spend any time with, and some other random kid who got kicked out of his table because there was not enough room. And I still remember being in 4th grade or so, sitting out on that porch, just disappointed that this is the way my week of summer camp is ending. This is the part where you go, aww. So a while ago, I was praying, and I don't even know why, but that memory comes to mind, and I'm thinking about that moment as I'm just kind of out on a prayer walk with the Lord, and I had the wherewithal in that moment to say, what is this all about? Why? Where did that come from? Why am I thinking about this? And in that moment, had the wherewithal to even ask the Lord, like, God, why is this memory coming to mind now? And it was as though the Lord said, Brian, all I want you to know is that in that moment, which would have been like 30-some years ago, like, I was with you. It was me, one or two other kids, this random counselor, 4 or 5 empty seats. He's like, I was in one of those seats with you. Again, that's like 30 years ago, but brought this great encouragement to my heart that God is present with me, even when I don't see it. Even when I'm disappointed and I don't have the mind about me to be sensitive, be spiritually sensitive and in tune to those moments. Even in those moments where I'm oblivious, God is present with me. We have this saying that we say around here at church a lot. God is always present, and he's always at work in your life. The question is, are you able to see it? Do you have the eyes to see where and how he's with you, where and how he's at work? And sometimes it's not even that he's doing anything. He's just present with you. God is always present, always at work. Even in the everyday, mundane realities of life, when life is disappointing and not what you thought it would be. Are you able to see that? And even if you can't, the good news is he is with you. Now, in this moment, not only is Jesus present with the disciples, but Jesus also provides. And there's two specific things that Jesus provides in this moment. We keep reading in verse 5. He called out to them, right? Jesus on the shore, they don't realize it's him. He called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? Now, if I'm one of the disciples in this boat and I see this strange guy on shore and he calls out to me, hey, did you catch anything last night? The first thing I might think is this guy taunting us? Like, is he rubbing it in? Does he somehow know that we don't have any fish and he's taunting us? And they respond back, continuing on in verse 5. No, they answered. Verse 6, he said, throw your net on the other side of the boat and you will find some. Again, if I'm a disciple and this random guy on the shore says this, I'm thinking to myself, he's definitely taunting us. Like, who does he think he is? We are fishermen. We've been in the water all night. We know where the fish are in this lake. Who does he think he is? He's absolutely rubbing it in. It kind of feels like that fan who watches a team, whatever sport it is, and their team is losing. And it's like that fan all of a sudden becomes a super fan and knows all the things the coach should do, knows how to make fix all their mistakes, knows how to call the play and call the defense. But the reality is they've never played a game in their life. They've never been a coach before, but somehow they just know everything. It kind of feels like that moment with Jesus and the disciples. Hey, go over there and you'll catch fish, right? But what do they have to lose? They've got nothing to lose. And so they throw their nets over the right side of the boat. Verse 6, when they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loves said to Peter, it is the Lord. And as soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and he jumped into the water. This scene, this moment in this story, always reminds me of this scene from Forrest Gump. And then it goes on. He climbs up onto the dock and he's like, you got no legs, Lieutenant Dan. And then behind him, his boat crashes into the dock next to him. Fortunately, Peter has friends in the boat with him that can steer the boat to shore. And when they do, verse 8, the other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. So in this moment, the first thing that Jesus provides is this amazing, miraculous catch of fish. And surely it reminds the disciples of that first moment when Jesus met them and called them. We read this story in Luke 5, around the same sea. They were fishing all night, caught nothing, and Jesus says, just throw them in. Throw your nets in one more time. And they catch more fish than they have ever caught before. And Peter drops to his knees and acknowledges, you are the Son of God. Jesus provides this amazing, miraculous catch of fish. But then the second thing he provides for them is breakfast. Verse 9. When they had landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it, and some bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you have just caught. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. I don't know about you, but I love the imagery of this scene. Like, I can totally put myself there, and it engages all of the senses, right? You imagine the sun is just coming up over the horizon. There's mist on the lake. The disciples are probably wet and a little cold. They've got goosebumps on their arms. Their hair's sticking up a little bit because of the cold. Peter's certainly wet. He's drenched because he just jumped in. And they walk up, and there's this fire. And you can feel the warmth of the flames. You can smell the smoke coming off the wood. There's warmth around it. There's aroma of fresh baked bread. There's fish that's just been grilled, and I like to imagine there's this big pot of fresh brewed coffee. Like, I don't even know if coffee was a thing, but Jesus can do it. He turned water into wine. Surely the Sea of Galilee into coffee is no big deal for Jesus. And no doubt they're hungry. They've been out all night, and they have caught nothing. You have two provisions in this moment. One massive and miraculous, this amazing catch of fish, and one small and subtle, something simple, like an everyday breakfast meal. And each are important. I don't know about you, but I tend to long for, want, and look for the big miraculous provisions in my life. God, when are you going to just take care of this thing over here for me? I'm stressed about it, and I just want you to deal with it. When are you going to do it, right? It's easy to believe that God is only doing something for us when we have that massive, unexpected, almost miraculous provision from the Lord. But each of these are important because Jesus is present in both of these. This is a picture of our first house in Atlanta. This was the first home that we owned. I loved this house. So many great memories from this house. We brought our 3 kids home from the hospital to this house. It was like, you can kind of see if you look beyond the house, like the landscape of the house, or the front yard was like the street was here, the house was here, the backyard was here. So if you stood in the back of the house, it kind of felt like you were in a tree house. You looked down and you saw all these trees. Just this amazing little house we had in Atlanta. But there was a season we lived in this house that I was wildly discontent with this house, super frustrated about living in this house. We bought it at the very end of 2008, and within the first month of 2009, we lost like $70,000 in value because the housing market crashed and just decimated everything everywhere, and we instantly were underwater in that house. And then a few months after that, Atlanta had this massive flood that swept through. This was 2009. And not only were we financially underwater in this house, we were literally underwater in this house because our basement flooded. And for like a whole weekend, we were like shoveling water, pumping water, trying to get water out of the house. And fortunately, we were really fortunate because of the landscape of the house and the ground below us being so low. Like our home was not submerged. There were homes, 2-story homes that were fully submerged in Atlanta in 2009 because of this massive flood. Now, around this same time, we had this single mom who lived across the street. She was having car trouble, and somebody from our church went and bought her a brand new car. Just one weekend, it showed up in her driveway, and she had this amazing car. A few months after that, the home she was living in, she was renting this house across the street. There was like a soft spot in her kitchen, kind of like spongy. She could like almost bounce on it. And she told the landlord, hey, this seems to be a problem. So the landlord went to fix that. Well, then he found more problems. He found more soft spots. He found mold and had to gut her entire kitchen. And she lived in that for a few weeks. And she said it was a mess all the time. Somebody in our church got word about that, went and bought a new condo specifically for her to move into, and said at some point this condo will just be yours and then you can do whatever you want with the money you make if you decide to sell it someday. And I remember hearing that thinking the Lord has done nothing for me. Nobody's buying me new cars. Nobody's buying me new houses. What? Am I not deserving enough of these things, Lord? What have you done for me ever, right? When we see other people have these amazing things happen to them, we naturally think to ourselves, well, the Lord has done nothing to me, unless his provision matches what's happening there. And that's just not true, because when I step back and look at my life, even in that season, even when I'm discontent and frustrated with the home that we're in, God had done so many amazing things. And he continues to do so many amazing things. He continues to provide all the things we need and more. God is a good and gracious Father. He's present with us in everyday moments of life, even when there's disappointment. He regularly provides everything we need and more. And if we have eyes to see him in it and what he's doing, it can radically change our mindset. And the last thing we see in this moment is that the Lord invites our participation. Now, what's interesting about the provision is that it's in the provision that the disciples realize Jesus is present. Because he says, when he provides the miraculous catch of fish, that's when John says, hey, it's the Lord. And then you read this in verse 12. None of the disciples, after he says, come have breakfast, asked him, who are you? Because they knew it was the Lord. When Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, he did the same with the fish. This was now the third time he appeared to his disciples after he had raised from the dead. It's in the provision that they recognize Jesus is present. And then after all of that, Jesus invites them to participate with him. He invites them to participate in three ways. The first is in relationship. And you see that in two different ways in this passage. The first thing is the first thing Jesus says to the disciples when he calls to them from shore. He says, hey, friends. Jesus is now defining his relationship with his disciples as friends. This is the same thing Jesus said in John 15. He says, I am the vine, you are the branches in that passage. Later on, he says, I now call you friends because you now know everything that the Father has told me. Jesus is defining his relationship with his disciples and us as though we are friends of God through Jesus Christ. The second thing Jesus does is he invites them to breakfast. He invites them to sit around this campfire as friends, to talk about how their trip from Jerusalem back to Galilee was. Tell me about what happened in the middle of the night and the stories of you not catching any fish. Tell me about these things. Jesus is sitting with them, sharing a meal as friends. That's one way that Jesus is inviting us to participate with him in a relationship, specifically as friends. How often do you view Jesus in that way? Sometimes we view Jesus as though he's there to do things for me or provide things for me. But how would your relationship with Jesus change if you viewed him as a friend and the main priority with that friend was simply to spend time with him? I don't need to accomplish anything. I don't need him to do anything for me. I don't need to do anything for him. I just want to be with him. The second thing that Jesus invites us to participate with is that of reconciliation. Now, this story subtly takes us back to chapter 18. And there's one word in this passage that connects us back to chapter 18. If we remember, chapter 18 is the chapter where Peter denies knowing Jesus 3 times. The same night, Jesus said, even if everybody else falls away, Jesus, I will go to the cross with you. But standing outside the courtyard of the high priest, around a charcoal fire, Peter denies Jesus 3 times. The word that connects chapter 18 to chapter 21, is the word anthrakai. It's the word that means charcoal fire in Greek. It is the word that is only used, that one word is only used in chapter 21, in chapter 18, in the entire scriptures. It's not used anywhere else. And it connects what happens when Peter denied Jesus to this moment. Have you ever had a moment where you walk into a place and there's like this smell that just catches you and it takes you back to some other place and moment in time? I would imagine maybe this moment does that for Peter. He's sitting around this fire, remembering the smell of the flames and the burning charcoal. Jesus is across the fire from him, and all of a sudden he's thinking back to a few weeks prior when he said, I don't know him. I've never met that guy. I have no idea who he is. And then after breakfast is over, we find that Jesus and Peter have this moment of reconciliation. Verse 15, when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Peter's response is, yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Then Jesus repeats that question 2 more times in a way to symbolize the 3 denials of Peter. And Peter each time answering, yes, you know that I love you. It's as though Jesus is putting to bed Peter's failure. It's as though Jesus in this moment is extending forgiveness and saying, that no longer defines you. You can put that in the past, Peter. I have dealt with that fully and completely. So I don't know what you're carrying this morning. I don't know what failures maybe you feel like you have committed. But this story is a reminder that Jesus invites us into participation with him, specifically within reconciliation, that he is seeking to reconcile us to him so that we can be agents of reconciliation to the world. Because you can only give away what you have, and if you haven't been reconciled to God, it's hard to bring other people into that process. And Jesus is setting the stage through relationship and love and reconciliation for us to extend that to others. Because the last thing that Jesus invites us to participate in is responsibility. He invites us to participate with him in relationship, reconciliation, and responsibility. Because after each time Peter says, yes, you know that I love you, Jesus says, feed my lambs. Take care of my sheep. Feed my sheep. Jesus is instilling responsibility to Peter to say that I trust you. I believe in you. I'm not going to be around much longer, and your life, while fishing may still be a part of your life, there's a bigger purpose to which I have called you. All of which this story illustrates that the resurrection brings purpose to everyday life. Even when we find ourselves in the mundane grind of life, Jesus is present with us. He's providing what we need so that we can be an agent of reconciliation and love to the world. He's present with us, he provides, and he invites us to participate with him and what he's doing in the world to bring healing and wholeness. In the same way that he's bringing healing to Peter, in the same way that he brought confidence to Thomas's doubt, in the same way that he brought peace to the fear of the disciples, and in the same way that he brought hope to Mary's grief all through chapter 20, he's putting us in the position to be those same people, to do that same thing in the moments of everyday life. And so what is your everyday grind of life? Like, what are you going into tomorrow? Are you able to see that Jesus is present with you in it? Even if you're going to a place you're like, I don't want to be at this place anymore. I don't want to be at this job. I don't want to be doing this. I wish my life was different. Do you have eyes to see that Jesus is present with you in it? He has given you everything you need. And he's inviting you to participate in relationship, reconciliation, and responsibility with him. When you see those things, it transforms your everyday life. No longer is it just mundane, but it's infused with kingdom purpose for you to be a kingdom witness wherever you go. So may you see that Jesus is always present. May you trust that even in the small things, he is the one who is providing everything you need. And may you be open to participate in the responsibility to which he's given you. Lord, we thank you so much for who you are. We thank you so much that you are a good and gracious God. It's so hard to fathom how you continually take care of us. Lord, I pray that you would give us eyes to see, that we would have the ability to know that you are with us and that you are for us, even when life is challenging, frustrating, and disappointing. And may we be willing to step out into the world in relationship with you, to participate in expanding, spreading, being a witness to your kingdom in whatever way you lead. We pray this in your name. Amen.